Hello. Today we're going to discuss reporting directly from the process without needing a historian or database. This is a low-cost but very effective solution which can be applied across all industries. The approach uses XLReporter's report-as-you-run technology, which you will hear about today. Before we proceed, please note that I will mute all attendees, so if you do need to ask a question during the presentation, please use the chat option, which I will monitor. With that said, let me pass you to Peter, who is Sytech's lead of engineering.
So good morning, everybody. As Tom said, we're going to talk about creating reports directly from the process. By this, we mean we're not going to involve a historian or a database, but we're going to take values directly out of the process and make it part of a report. Before we go into the details, let me just talk about who we are. Sytech's been in business for over 25 years. We started in 1994 as system integrators, and today I'm going to talk to you about XLReporter version 14. We have a worldwide distribution. We work with system integrators, resellers, OEMs. Our product is found in a number of places. So what do we do as a company? Two good things. We produce reporting software, and we provide first-class support. On the reporting software side, we provide reports and dashboards for industry. So the product is made specifically for industrial applications. And the subtext here, if you know Excel, you know XLReporter, is going to be revisited over and over again during this presentation. So if you are an Excel user and you want to apply some of those skills that you've built up over the years, you're going to get very familiar with XLReporter the moment you open the box. And the other thing that we're very proud of is our first-class support. We have a dedicated staff that's going to be able to help you all along the way. So briefly, what is reporting? Here's a report for the water industry. One notable feature here is that this report was downloaded as a template from the state's website. And that's an important thing. Immediately we're saying, if you know Excel, you know XLReporter. This was an Excel spreadsheet that was downloaded. Similar thing in wastewater industry. Now we move to manufacturing. Some energy management in food and beverage will find a clean in place report. Operations. Machine builders or production facilities want to know about their overall equipment effectiveness. For your information, most of these templates are available in the product. For those of you that want to analyze their reports, their alarms, then we provide ISA 18.2 compliance, batch management. So as you can see, the list is endless. But today we're going to concentrate on reports that are possible directly from the process. Before I do that, let's just quickly go over some of the background of XLReporter. And as you can see, there are regulatory reports. There are companies that will support Excel as a community. So our objective was, can we take this workbook technology to industry with one big hurdle that we had to cross, and that is we wanted to avoid needing Microsoft Excel, but still be able to produce workbooks, produce workbook templates, produce reports in various formats, to be able to distribute that information automatically, and also to be able to create on-demand reports from mobile, tablets, and desktops. And our solution is XLReporter. It takes you beyond Excel. So let's turn our attention to the subject matter of today, and that is, where does live data come from? Well, here I highlighted some of the business industry standards like DA, UA, but we also have interfaces to the vendor specifics like Rockwell, Emerson Delta V, Wonderware, Kepware. And what does it look like at a top level? What does reporting live look like? Well, Here I have a PLC. I might have an I/O rack. I might have an HMI, and all these will be able to produce live data for our purposes. Now, that live data could be accessed through DAUA, and we also have some native drivers to go out and grab live data. XLReporter is going to grab that live data, and it's going to start building reports automatically on time or on events. So when we talk about on time, what's going on here is XLReporter is going out, grabbing a value, say every hour, and populating a daily report. It's almost like your history and your reporting is all in one. When we talk about on event, XLReporter is monitoring events in the process, and when that event 50, or it could be when a pump starts, it will go out and grab values and populate reports. The other thing that it will do automatically is after the reporting period, say my daily report now is completed, how can I get it to an audience so we can publish automatically as well? Now, while this reporting has been taking place, what's happening in the background is workbooks are being populated incrementally. We are not creating our own database here. If you wanted us to create our own database, or you want us to use Party Historian, that's the subject of another workshop. Today, what we're talking about is populating the report incrementally over time. Then what we can also do is report on demand. And you might say, well, how can that be relevant when you're dealing with process data? I'll give you a quick visualization. Suppose I have an engineer and they're walking around with a phone, and they want to press and get a current state of all the values in the process. They may be standing next to a machine that's not functioning correctly, so they may want to turn to a template that represents that machine, and they press a push button, and XLReporter will deliver to that mobile device all the metrics that have been configured out of that particular piece of equipment. So how are we doing all this? Well, we have this technology called Report as You Run. And it really, you have to answer 3 questions. Which report do I want to update? So you've told XLReporter, create this report every month. And you've told it that this is the name of the report, and now it knows what report to update. You then have to tell XLReporter when to update this report. If it's a report that needs to be updated on time, then you would put in a time-based schedule. But it may be a report that also runs on events when a bit goes high, or every 5 minutes during a machine cycle. So all this information is put in the scheduler to represent when to update. But now here's the most important bit. Where do we place the data once we've grabbed it from the live data? Well, XLReporter has a good collection of placement types, from direct to offset, append, insert, and we're going to talk about each one's on. But if you look at the picture, this report was updated on March the 14th, 2020, and XLReporter knew exactly which tab and exactly which row the data had to go in. This is an example of offset placement. So we can take data from the PLC, but we can also use that to write a heartbeat or a handshake to the PLC. It's important because when you're dealing directly with a PLC, it's likely that the metrics are all being calculated and held in the PLC. And then XLReporter is requested to go out and grab that information, and it can give you a heartbeat or a handshake back. We can also write back to the PLC So we could be used, say, as a calculation engine. You could read values from the PLC, we could do a calculation, and then we could write the information back. Also, set points and recipes. We have customers that download values from a database and then write them out to the PLC. We also, when we're dealing with web reports, do you remember that that operator was going around with a phone? Well, what we showed you was the web version of that, but if that same report was looked at a desktop, it would look like this. And if you want to see more of the responsive reporting concept, I suggest you go to XLReporter.net. The idea here is that the report is rendered depending on the device that you're viewing it on. So let's look at some examples, and then after that, I'm going to go into some hands-on for you to see how it all comes together live. So here I had a customer. They wanted to create a report every hour. They wanted to take some PLC data and put it inside a daily report, and those daily reports were in a monthly workbook. This is pretty straightforward. In fact, we have a template wizard that will produce you this just by answering a couple of quick questions. That's part of my hands-on in a moment. So we create a report at the start of the day, grab PLC data every hour, and then provide handshakes to PLC, maintaining the folders. That's nice as well, because if we are creating new reports, say every day, it would be nice if it went into a monthly folder, which is a subfolder of an annual folder. This one's a little different because it's not on time, it's on event. What we want to do is we want to grab information from this machine when it starts and then periodically update the report. That's exactly what we do. Now we go into the scheduler, we set up some event schedules. One event schedule is going to be run the report when we get a cycle start. Another schedule line is going to be update the report while the cycle's in progress. And then finally, add a summary. What's important here is that this report didn't get updated at one go. It actually had a header put into it. The body was populated periodically while in progress, and a summary was attached to the end when the cycle finished. Here we have some storage tanks. And I'm going to show you how XLReporter can take the height of those tanks and convert them to volumes. So the idea here is that we read from the PLC. We have some lookups inside a workbook, and those heights get converted to volumes, which are then pushed back to the PLC. Another very good example of this would be if you were doing energy calculations, which can be very, very complicated. And so we're using XLReporter here as a back-end calculation engine where it can read PLC values, perform some action on it, and then push the results back to the PLC. This also was quite interesting because certain values, if they drop below a threshold, in other words, the volume was below a specific value, it automatically generated an email. So this is another important, not important, but a feature that you should be familiar with, and that is that a report can trigger actions as well. The content of a report can trigger actions. Here we needed to do some high-speed data collection, 10 to 25 milliseconds over a cycle. And XLReporter did that by working with the PLC, telling the PLC programmer, hey, keep everything in arrays, put a bit high, and XLReporter will go out and read the entire array and add it as blocks to the report. So here we're not singly adding rows, but we're adding blocks of data. Finally, we have overall equipment effectiveness. go out and we read the information from the PLC, drive some key metrics out to the PLC, and show the result on message boards. So how do you start? Well, first, we provide a downloadable copy of Excel Reporter from our website at Sytech.com. Then what you would do is create data connectors. Now, if you're like me and you're stuck at home and you don't have hardware freely available, then what you can do is you can use our simulator drivers. And we have a simulator for real-time, simulator for historical, and alarms. Then what we suggest is you review our media. We have a document library, video library, and tutorials on our website. The document library will explain things like, how do I connect to my live data? How do I perform this and that operation? There's some roadmaps in there if you wish. The videos expand on that concept, and the tutorials will give you a step-by-step instruction on how to do it. And if all else fails, you can always contact us. We are at sales@Sytech.com. So this will be the end of the slide, and we're going to go out and be ambitious and do some hands-on. And so here we go. So after you've installed Excel Reporter, you are going to see the Project Explorer. One good practice straight away would be to create your own project. You do that by doing File, New, because what you're seeing here is the demo project, and it's not probably important that you see all this in a deployed solution. Click Next. Give your project a name. I would recommend you choose a name that sort of reflects the project, like maybe a customer name or a production facility, something general that encompasses all the work that's going to take place here. The next step that you're going to do is you're going to connect to your data sources. And if you're like me and you don't have a data source readily available, I would then follow me and go and get the simulator real time. If you do have your data sources, like if you're a Rockwell user, RS Links, and so on. If you're a Kepware user, then we have the Kepware DA and UA. If you have some generics, we have some generics here. I'm going to stick with this. It defaults to XLR DA, and I'll be happy with that. And then I'll click Finish. And let me just, sorry. I need to put in an administrator passcode in order to enable the web portal. All right. So the first report I'm going to do is using the template library. This is really easy, puts together a really good solution without having to get too involved with details, but I'm going to go over the details once it's been created. So I'm going to create this values report. Notice that it collects values periodically. It creates tabs, and we're going to go through all the elements of this in a moment. Let's hit Next. And let me call this my process values. Here I'm giving a name to my template. Notice it's a scheduled report, so next, after I choose my tags that are going to appear, and if this was connected to live data, what you would be getting here are live lists of tags from your process. Let's hit Next again. By default, this is going to create a daily report, populate it by hourly information, and put all that information in a monthly book. So every day I'm going to get a new tab. I'm going to take the default and just move on. And as you can see, Excel Reporters to update this workbook process values every hour, which is what I would expect. Let's take a little dive into here first before I actually do a simulation run to show you the makeup of this template. I just need to slide this over. So as you can see, the tags that I chose are listed here. The data is driven to this template through Connect, and this is probably the most important button on this tab here. Let's click Connect, and I just need to slide the other one over as well. And as you can see, I have some data being driven from my XLR DA connector, which is my simulator. And this data is being put in B6. It's B6, but it's using the offset placement using the hour of the day, which means that if I run it today, right now, it's 11 o'clock. So the values will not go in B6, but they will go 11 rows away from B6. If I double click into here, I can actually see my tags. If I wanted to change, I could change things here. Another nice little feature of this is it has a quick preview button if I wanted to see a quick dash of the values that are currently in my process. So I haven't really changed anything. I'm just explaining to you the elements of this report. And then the other thing that probably you want to know about is report name. So really there are three things that you should be focusing on when you design a report. The layout, which has already been done for you, the connection, where the data is going to go, and now the report names, which is going to describe the names of the target files that are going to be created. And as you can see here, this is going to create a month and year with the word process value. So every month we're going to get this workbook created. And then inside that workbook, we're going to get a daily sheet. And within that daily sheet, we're going to get hourly values. So it's a three-dimensional puzzle. Click refresh. And as you can see, the data has been driven here into this slot because we're sitting around 11 o'clock. Now, a lot of people ask me, how do I get a sort of a full-scale test of this report? And I say, well, it's real time. So you could use the scheduler, but be careful. The reports it's going to generate are not real because it's only going to be the live value. So, but a good way of testing that report to its nth degree is by going into test, putting in 2 dates, and then telling Excel Reporter to run between those 2 dates. So what it's going to do is it's going to trigger an update of that report every hour from December the 31st, 2018 to January 2019. I've deliberately gone over the edge of the year because I want you to see what happens when we go over the edge of a month and a year. So let me hit start. And what we're going to see is Excel Reporter updating that report every hour see what happened there? All right, so it ran the report every hour. And no, it did that without using Excel. I do have Excel on my machine, but it didn't make any use of Excel to do that. And yet it's created a set of workbooks. Now you might ask yourself, well, if I don't have Excel on here, how am I going to be able to see that information? And the answer is we provide a workbook viewer. And as you can see, I have process values, and I have my December 31st, and then I have my January the 1st, and it ends on midnight, January the 2nd, which was the time period I asked for the generation of this test. Obviously, the values make no sense, and these reports are of no value, but it is a start. Let me turn to another example. This time, I'm going to use our template studio. Now, for those of you that prefer to use Excel, you can load our template studio inside Excel by going to Project, Workbook, and changing it here. So you would use the Excel Studio. I prefer to use the standalone studio because it reinforces the fact that we do not use Excel to be able to produce workbook reports and the other formats we've mentioned earlier. I'm going to do a file new, and I'm going to call this report my extruder report. Now, I cheated a bit because I created some templates because I didn't need to show you how to lay things out on an Excel spreadsheet. So I've created some templates so that I can use that straight away. And I'm looking here for that template, and it seemed to be here. Just one moment. Oh, well, I'm not in good shape to do that. So let me move on and we will do a new report. But what I'm going to do now, instead of populating a report on time, I am going to populate it on events. So let me call this my event report and import a template. So this is my event report. Now, a reason why it doesn't have so much structure right now is because it's going to get populated every time there's an event inside the PLC. I'm going to get the information to populate this area here, and as the data starts coming in, this area is going to start expanding out, and I'm going to explain to you how you configure that. Some other things that you may want to take a note of here is that I've got a calculation table at the top. And notice that the calculations are only attached to rows 10 and 11. And what's going to happen is as I bring data into this report, these calculations are also going to expand out. All this expansion is happening because of the data placement type that I'm going to choose. The other thing that I may want you to take an observation here is that this equals B10. And this is a good way of showing a date and time in various formats. Here I'm just showing the date and time as an hour. Here I'm going to show it as a full date. So I don't need to bring that information in twice. I can share a date and time out amongst all the different cells that need it. So let's go and connect some data, because all I have right now is a flat, all I have is the content. I'll go to my DA group, and I'm going to add some values that correspond to these columns. Now, one thing that I also want you to know is that this column here is a calculation built from these 4 values here. So what I'm not going to do is push any data into this column. So let's start with the first 4 zone temperatures. I'll go online, I'll pick my 2 mixer temperatures, and I'll pick my 2 extruder temperatures. Then I'm going to hop over the average to go and get my barrel pressure which I don't have, so I'll just choose this, and my pelletizer speed. Notice the empty row here in our preview will create an empty row in the output here. Save these edits. Now, this is the most important piece of this. I want the values to go here, but I want them to be inserted, pushing everything else down. And as a consequence, the insertion operation is going to expand these formulas at the same time. Let's hit add. Push this down. If I preview, see what I'm saying. Hit refresh. So it looks like I need to put a time in here. This doesn't look right. We'll correct that. Looks like I've got some old templates here. This average hasn't actually done its thing as well. So let me just go and show you how to correct those two things. Again, I'm inside the design studio, so formatting is slightly different, but it's the same idea. I want to make this a time, and I'll show the seconds. And in here, I want to put equals the average, and I think it's the full word. And I want to pull this across. Actually, I have it there. I wonder if I can just take this formula and right-click and paste it in here. Well, never mind. I'll just stay where I am. That expression, I'll explain to you what that is in a moment. If you notice that when I did the average of these cells, we just backtrack. Let me just start again. Equals the average four cells here. All right, if you notice, it gives me this pound diff horrible thing. That is a workbook. That is a workbook concept. And if you want to avoid that, you can use the is error. And if there's an error, it shows a blank. Otherwise, it will show the formula itself. All right, let's get back to preview. There seems to be a bit of background noise here. And you can see the two edits that I've made here and here. Now, one thing that people are unaware of, because when you hit refresh again, it's just going to add it to the same report. And that's because XLReporter has been configured to do that when it's simulating. But you can go in here and force it to update the existing report so that you can see what it looks like as an event occurs. And notice that every second I'm getting a new row of data and all my calculations are updating. Here I managed to get 4 updates in 1 second. All right, so that piece of it's done now. Let's go to report names and give this a name. So I'll come over. I'm creating daily events, but what I'll do here is I will show you how to create folders automatically, really easy. Just remember to put the / symbol. And what you're really doing here is you're creating a folder path. You see that? Event, year, month. That's why I put the / there. You could put hard-coded text here. It's entirely up to you. But that is the folders that are going to get created. And now I'll do the events. And since it's a daily report, I will just tag on DD at the end of this. So now what I'm going to get is a daily report inside a monthly folder. And then at the workbook level, I'll just do DD just for good measure. It's not necessary really because I'm only going to have one sheet per book. The other thing that people are unaware, and it's also a good practice, is to go and hide the template sheet once the report is updated, so this will actually disappear. So let's preview this out one more time, hit refresh, and you can see here my 05 sheets got created. And now what I will do is turn over to the schedule and add a brand new schedule in here. It's going to be event-based. It's going to be machine cycle. When it equals 1, I want to update this template here. It's always good to also outline the schedule. Once you start ending up with a lot of lines on the schedule, it's nice that you can comment there. So this would be my event section. And so now you can collapse areas out that are not relevant. So let's just let's just generate a few events. Let's hit test. And I'm just going to force my time back to midday. Hit start. And now I'm just going to throw in some random times and hit start again. And again, if you had the PLC, you could simulate all that. And then we'll go over to workbook reports and we'll take a look at the event. Notice the directory structure, then we get down to May, and there are the 3 events that I generated sitting on an 05 sheet. Let me show you something a little bit more complicated. Well, not complicated, but more richer in content. And I'm going to call this my process live report. Hit OK. Oh, sorry, new. I'm going to call it my process dash live. Let's just call it my process values report. And I'm going to base it on a template. And as you can see here, this is a fully framed out template. And what it relies on is the data that's coming from the data sheet. So let's just go in there and add the data. I'm highlighting this cell because I need the data to appear here. Go to connect. And what I want to do on this particular template is I want the user to be able to choose the tags they want to see. So what that means is it's an on-demand report, and I'm going to let the user choose up to 40 tags. These things in curly brackets are variables. They're XLReporter variables. So if I hit preview here, you'll notice that it's prompting me to choose a tag or tags. So I'll hit refresh and you can see it went and grabbed these 4 tags. This is exactly what I want the user experience to be when this report is run. Now, the other thing that you notice when you hit preview and refresh, the values go across. And in my template, I want the values to go down. That is called transposing. So I'm going to transpose. And also, I want to include the headings. So that now when I hit preview, it looks like this, which looks very, very similar to the arrangement that I have in my report. So I'm going to stick with that. Let's hit save. And let's bring those values and put them into the cell B3. Let me hit add. Now, because this is an on-demand report, we need to go and design what the user's experience is going to be. And I know that I don't need this, and I'm not going to go into the details, but I'm going to let the user choose the tags. But I'll show you that whatever text I put in here is going to show up for the user, and enter user 1. I'll just update that 1. And then in actions, and again, we won't go into the details today, but what I want to do is I want to update the data sheet. So this is what the user is going to see. Notice that that piece of configured text is what I just put in there. So let's hit preview and see what the user experience looks like. And this is what the user would see. Let's click next, online, choose some tags, and choose some tags here, and choose some more tags here, and hit refresh. You can see the process values have been brought in. And this dashboard here is driven completely off the data sheet. So as I put more tags in or hit refresh, I am going to get an update of this dashboard. Now, sometimes I have customers saying to me, why is it that every time I refresh the report, it goes to the data sheet? Well, that's because whatever state you leave this in is the state that it's going to be presented to the user. So if I come in here and flip this to report and save this away, file, save, and then I hit preview again. Oh, sorry. It jumped back. So let me just do a file, save. Oh, how about that? Let me hit preview from here and hit refresh. And now if I hit refresh again, you can see I've got a nice little dashboard for an operator to use as they're walking around the facility. So let's web enable this and see what it looks like on my website. So I'm going to open up a browser. This bit I haven't rehearsed, so it could be anyone's guess where I go with this one. So I'm going to open up a browser and bring it over here and type in localhost. And yes, I'll start a new session. And you can see here I've got my Process Live templates. In fact, these are the templates that we made today. I'll click on Process Live, hit refresh, and the report is rendered. And oh, maybe it was process values. Let me try this one. Refresh. No. All right. So I'm going to use my Windows client. I hadn't set that up before this WebEx. So let me see if it will work from here. Process values, hit refresh. I wonder if any support guy can tell me what could be happening here. Oh, it's no process values, no space. What does that mean? Just go back to my browser. I have a support person. Look how our support people work. They're right on my back. He says process values, no space. He's right. Aren't those support guys good? And every time I refresh now, you can see I'm getting an update of the report. But here's something interesting. I've just narrowed it down to the size of a phone. And if I hit refresh now, you can see that the report has rendered differently. And down at the bottom should be my graphics. So as you can see, just because values are coming out of the process directly into a report, there is a lot of things you can do. You can create reports on demand. You can historize inside the report. You can create machine cycle reports and populate things on events. You can even create live dashboards and put them on the web so that operators can go around updating reports from their mobile devices. Thank you for your attendance. There is a lot more that we could have talked about, but I'm hoping that this will give you some idea of how to create reports from the process without a historian or database. If you wish to ask some questions, please enter them in the chat window.
Peter, actually, there is a question.
Okay.
Is there a restriction to the number of templates you can have configured and running?
Now, unlike other products, our licensing is one price. It's not a subscription. It's one price for unlimited tags, templates, and reports. The only thing that we charge is where the data source is coming from. So if it's coming from live, it's one price. If it's from history, it's another price. And if it's a database, it's another price. If it's a collection of all three, it's another price. So no limits. Any other questions?
Okay, there was another question about how much data can be saved in a single report.
Oh, that's a tough question. You know, we don't want to be appearing like we're a historian. And so putting a lot of data in a report, especially a workbook, does make the data somewhat unmanageable. So you got to be careful if you want to do it. But anyway, we did some benchmarks, bringing in values. I think it was 5,000 values, and we were able to populate 5,000 rows every second without losing a heartbeat. So there were 5,000 1-second samples. When we bumped that up to 10,000, we had to slow the recording rate to 2 seconds. And we have been up to several 100,000 and been able to cope. But I wouldn't tell anybody to go and create 100,000 rows inside a report. You need a database or a historian if you're going to collect those sort of volumes of data. And there is workshops on those topics later this week, or if not next week.
Okay, another question that came up is, just to clarify, is it live data from the PLC?
No, we rely on these connectors here. So we rely on, well, this one is simulator, but we do rely on drivers that are provided by these vendors or OPC. So if you are a Rockwell user, I don't know, does the caller tell us what type of user they are? No. Well, if you're a Rockwell user, you're going to need RS links or factory talk links. If you're a HMI user, we do have native drivers or OPC. It's entirely up to you which way you want to go. That's true for GE. That's also true for Wonderware as well. We have a direct interface and OPC. But the way the industry is going right now, everyone's migrating over to OPC with OPC UA very, very clear in the distance. So I think that native drivers will be a thing of the past, and I think that OPC UA will be the way in which we're going to talk live data from process values.
Okay. The question that we had is, when we create a project, there is an option for the project offline. Can you highlight that?
Yes, if you want to work with your customers' PLC tags and you do not have the PLC at your home, which most of us are working in it right now, then what you can do is you can turn the project offline. What that means is you can still continue developing your customer's project using their tags. But what XLReporter will do is it will simulate the tag values for the report so that you can validate that things are correctly formatted, that your charts are working correctly, and so on. Then when you finish your development and you have the next opportunity to go out on site, you install this project and turn it back online, and XLReporter will then go and reach out to the actual hardware.
Okay, another question. We currently have version 11.7. Is it possible to migrate existing reports without much modification to this version?
Well, maybe you can field that one because
Sure.
you tend to get.
That's true. Yeah. Yes, it is possible to migrate those. The majority of what you've configured will come across. Will be upgraded just fine. Maybe small things, but I would say 95% of it will upgrade with no problem.
Do you have any particular features that would concern you?
Not really. I mean, the kind of things that I'm talking about are, like things that very few people use, like maybe macros and things of that nature. Very, very obscure, not mainstream things.
All right, and some of the more advanced features of Excel, like smart lines and solver add-in and things of that nature.
Pivot tables, yeah, exactly.
And just for people's information, we do support running these advanced Excel features. There is a lot of that inside our product. We don't go and advertise it because it will require the user to have Excel installed on their machine. But there are a number of things that we can run which are advanced options in Excel. But now you are going to need Excel as your configurator, and you are also going to need XLReporter to be told about the copy of Excel that you have on the PC. It's not what we want you to do because that isn't the vision of our product.
Okay, here's another one. We're planning on a historian, but this seems like a good first step. How much of what I create with a live can I reuse once the historian's in place?
All right, well, that's a good question. Obviously, all the workbook work that you've done, like the layout, the charts, the formulas, the formats, you name it, all that is untouched. That's just going to move over. So you're going to need to come in here and you're going to need to remove this and you're going to say add and you're going to have to create another connector. Now you could create the new connector with the same name as the old connector. However, there are other things that are going to need to be changed, and that is the groups that are within the template, because this tag space here may not be exactly the same tag space used inside the historian. Now, we have a way of converting this from one group type to another group type, and if the tags are the same, then it's very, very easy. So really, it's a question of, there's two questions there. There's one is, did the tag names change when you went from live to history? And if so, there's going to be a bit of work there. If not, then it's straightforward, but you're going to need to change these group types from DA to HDA. We have the tools for you to do that.
Okay, here's another question. Is it possible to link more than one database or device available, like an OPC server, in one report project?
Yes, every connector I have shown you here is can be attached to one single report. And if any one of you can do that and have all the hardware to support that report, I will give you $100. How's that? But the short answer is yes, you can. You can take any one of these connectors and have them sitting side by side in the same report. Absolutely.
Not just in the same project, but actually in the same report as well.
In the same report, yes, side by side. So if you are experiencing a migration from, say, the customer wants to migrate from vendor A to vendor B, there is a way of creating a report that will show both vendors side by side. And you can prove to the customer first, the migration is working, look, we haven't lost anything. And then you can turn the other vendor off. I think we're getting close to the end of the hour. Any last questions?
I think I've got one more here. How can you produce summary reports from the ones you produce periodically?
How can you produce? I think what the user's trying to say there is, let's say I create a daily report and I want a monthly report from it. I'm just assuming that that's the question. Then what you can do is...
Just mute yourself. Sorry.
I think that this is a loaded... Can
Let me mute everybody, yeah.
The answer to that question is a little loaded. So can that user maybe have a private chat and we can go over the details of that? There are a number of ways in which you can take these daily reports and make them part of a monthly. But it's a question of how little or how much technology they want to put in there. The simplest would be just to export the values out at the end of every day and take the totals of the day and push them into the monthly book. But we do have much better ways of doing it. All right, I think that the hour is up, so I'm sorry I can't answer any more questions, but if you want to private email us at sales@sytech.com, and I think we also have support@sytech.com. Is that correct, Tom?
That is correct, yes.
We'll field questions at those two email addresses. Again, that's sales or support at Sytech, SYTECH.com. Thank you very much for your attendance. You've been a good audience, and I look forward to talking to you in other workshops. Bye.